We're following the latest on the search for Nancy Guthrie out of Tucson, Arizona. It has now been 2 weeks since she was first reported missing in Tucson. Authorities believe that Nancy, the 84-year-old mother of Today's Show host Savannah Guthrie, was forcibly taken from her home on February 1st. This weekend, there has been a flurry of activity by investigators, but still no suspects in custody and no sign of Nancy. Fox's Caroline Elliott is in Tucson with the latest.
The search for Nancy Guthrie is now entering its third week, but as far as we know, investigators still do not have a suspect in this case.
What I know is, we found DNA. And
it was not Nancy Guthrie's DNA.
That was not Nancy Guthrie's DNA. So we'll still work with that, and we're working with our lab on that.
The investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie enters day 15, as detectives hope new DNA evidence could provide some answers.
400 cops out there. They all have hope.
Over the weekend, the Pima County Sheriff's Department conducted multiple searches focusing on homes at the Catalina foothills, not far from Nancy Guthrie's home. Investigators detained at least 4 people Friday night for questioning, but they were later released.
But at the same token, this is not at a loss, because there may have been information that law enforcement was able to extract from all of the individuals involved as we move forward in the investigational process.
In one search, the FBI seized a gray Range Rover about 2 miles away from Nancy Guthrie's home. Investigators were seen taking photos and collecting evidence before towing the car away.
They're probably going to be testing for hair and fiber, see if there's any blood spatter inside, any DNA that can be pulled off of it.
The FBI now counting on the public to take another close look at this surveillance video from Nancy Guthrie's doorbell camera, searching for a man described as 5'9" or 5'10" with an average build. The Pima County Sheriff's Department tells us several DNA samples have been sent to a private lab in Florida for testing. Meantime, the sheriff also told us we should expect daily police activity here in the Tucson area as investigators continue following up on leads. In Tucson, Arizona, Caroline Elliott, Fox News.
So now 2 weeks into the search for Nancy Guthrie, again, no suspects in custody and no sign of Nancy out there in Tucson, Arizona. According to FBI analysis from the doorbell video camera seen here, this is the night before Nancy went missing. The suspect is described by the FBI as a male between 5'9" and 5'10" with an average build, carrying a 25-liter Ozark Trail Hiker Pack backpack, wearing a mask and gloves. And tonight, the FBI is now awaiting forensic results on a similar-looking glove that was found near the home. We want to bring you some of that statement from the FBI today. So the FBI is saying, the spokesperson is saying that 16 gloves have been found near Nancy's house, but most of them were discarded by searchers during the investigation. However, one glove appears to match the gloves seen in that surveillance video and was sent for DNA testing. According to the spokesperson, the FBI received preliminary results on Saturday, and they are now awaiting quality control and official confirmation before entering that unknown male DNA profile into the Bureau's national DNA database. The spokesperson said this process typically takes 24 hours from when the Bureau receives the DNA. So this is a full statement from the FBI. They say the gloves found approximately 2 miles from the Guthrie residence in a field near the side of the road were packaged up by PCSD and sent overnight on February 12th. They arrived at their private lab in Florida on the 13th. The FBI received preliminary results yesterday on the 14th and are awaiting quality control and official confirmation today before putting that unknown male profile into the national database unique to the Bureau. The process typically takes about 24 hours from when the Bureau receives the DNA. And the investigators collected approximately 16 gloves in various areas near the house. Most of them were searchers' gloves that were discarded in various areas when they searched the vicinity. The one with the DNA profile recovered is different and appears to match the gloves of the subject seen in that surveillance video. The FBI has and will continue to provide assistance on whatever timeline is provided to us. So we are still awaiting the results from that DNA analysis. For more on this, so let's bring in law enforcement expert Jamie Copenhaver. So Jamie, thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Good to be with you, Shawna. Thank you.
So let's break down this DNA analysis process. Can you tell us how it usually works, starting with this quality control step that we are also waiting on? What does that entail?
Yeah, we've all seen this play out. We saw the ladder glove, we believe, picked up and packaged by law enforcement officials on the side of that road. So, they're going to take that glove into their custody. They're going to bag it properly within the protocols of the lab. And then, I'm not sure in this case, Shawna, if they actually flew that glove to Florida or perhaps sent it via FedEx or what have you, but we know it was shipped to the Florida lab for their analysis. And what they're going to do is a full analysis of that glove inside and out for any bodily fluids or any DNA, touch DNA, et cetera, to try to match up with some of the swabbing they have done in the past that we've seen play out.
So then what happens once that DNA goes into the national database? What is this national database, and how does that step work? Also, is there any way to speed up this process in a case like this where time is, of course, of the essence?
Yeah, unfortunately, the science can't be sped up. As from my understanding, speaking to a few experts that have done this for years, it's just the process, right? So, I think we're getting a pretty fair turnaround up to 2 days. So that's encouraging to me. The CODIS database, that's a database that's containing DNA samples and swabs of everyone they've swabbed in the past, if you will. Anyone they've came across in terms of law enforcement activity, they take that analysis or that swabbing, if you will, enter to the CODIS database. So what you're going to see is once these results come back on the 16 or so gloves that are being tested, they want to match any of the results from those gloves to anyone known to them on the CODIS database to see if you can perhaps get a match.
And Jamie, there are also several private companies like 23andMe, Ancestry.com, where people will submit their DNA in order to learn about their genealogy. Would that be something that authorities would be able to tap into, and how would they go about that legally?
Very, very good question. You're right on point. So here's the deal. If that lab or the CODIS comes up with no match, they presumably could get a court order, presumably, and go into some of these private organizations or company who seek help in identifying whatever examples and lab results they get from those gloves and other items that are obviously being tested. I will tell you, I'm a little disheartened in terms of 16 gloves. It sounds like some searchers may have discarded those gloves, in not a proper fashion, if you will. If you're out on the search, one would tend to believe that you would maintain that glove if you're going to take it off, so you don't not really contaminate the scene, but cause extra work for the lab. We know it takes time. But, it's quite possible all the above will be utilized in this over the next 2 to 4 days.
And this statement today was put out by an FBI spokesperson. We've seen them putting out several statements, a lot more than lately the Pima County Sheriff. Does that indicate that the FBI has taken over the lead in this investigation at this point?
Not necessarily. Keep in mind, FBI is there as a resource to the Pima County Sheriff's Office. We've heard that multiple times. Going back last week, we were hearing there was some sort of rift between the locals and the federal FBI Bureau. The sheriff came out and sort of set the record straight that they both agreed, he and the FBI, to send that glove to Florida for any evidence. So, don't believe exactly what you're hearing until we hear it from the horse's mouth. I'm encouraged because, Shawna, we don't hear the FBI speaking a lot about any past cases. They go into the investigation. We don't hear a lot, especially if FBI is in charge. But I think what they're doing, it's a trending story. It's America's grandmother that's missing. And I think FBI is trying to get ahead a little bit on the PR to notify us that they're on the right track. They're moving the ball down the court in terms of trying to solve this case. So, kudos to the FBI spokesman that came out and garnered that statement.
And it has been quite a while since Nancy Guthrie was last seen. We have now hit the 2-week mark. At this point, what kind of things are investigators looking for? We have seen, of course, a lot of police activity just this weekend. They say that there will be even more throughout the week. The Pima County Sheriff saying we should expect that police activity to continue at least through the weekend. How would investigators be maybe changing their approach while they wait on this DNA analysis, or what could be the next step after that comes in?
Yeah, I mean, they came out and said 17 or so hundred tips that came in. The interesting fact, they started out with a $50,000 reward coming from the FBI or the federal government. That reward has been increased to $100,000. So that's a lot of money, right? You're going to continue to receive tips. The painstaking part of that, Shawna, is you have to vet those tips out to see if they qualify to be put in a triage, if you will, for ground agents to go out and literally follow up on those. So in the future, what they're telegraphing to us, I would expect potentially another search warrant or maybe additional search warrants to persons suspected in this case. We saw that Range Rover, which was encouraging, being towed by the FBI. So, they're processing that Range Rover as we speak. We don't know what will be yielded from that search. But then again, additional items of concern could be sent to the lab. But more importantly, it could provide additional new leads or clues that would, obviously get closer to solving the case and recovering Nancy Guthrie.
And we are awaiting, again, those DNA results. And I'm sure investigators are very hopeful that they will get a match. But if that DNA comes back with a no match, according to this national database, what would be next for investigators at that point?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to take whatever results are yielded from those gloves, or the glove in this case, and you're going to hold that, if you will. And it's going to be a panel of DNA samples. And here's what I would expect. If nobody matches up to that, and we hope it does, right? We want to bring this case to closure. That at least gives them something fresh to work on in terms of any DNA that may have been found off the gloves. Meaning, Shawna, if they go out and encounter additional people that are suspicious or persons of interest, if they can obtain a swabbing from that individual or individuals, that too can be matched with the process of the gloves that we're seeing play out in the state of Florida at that lab. So I think it's all encouragement. I think they're definitely working on solid leads and solid footing in terms of moving forward. We're just going to have to wait on the science in terms of the DNA to come back before we know the result.
Like you mentioned, we've seen people be detained for questioning, but still no suspects in custody. If this DNA does come back with a match, is that enough to make an arrest in this case?
And that's an interesting question. Let's go back to the TV interview of a local station the sheriff gave just a few days ago. He felt very strongly and felt that Nancy may be alive. We're going on what the sheriff said in the statement, right? But the encouraging part was, he was asked point blank, do you have suspects? And the sheriff pretty much said, none yet. These individuals weren't released after they were detained, but that doesn't mean they can go back and charge or re-interview them. So I thought that was somewhat shocking. The sheriff would come out and say that. It could have been a miscue, or it could have been intentional, but either way, he did make that statement. I find that super encouraging.
Okay, Jamie Copenhaver, law enforcement expert, we really appreciate you giving your input here. We will, of course, be watching this closely as we await those DNA results.
Good to be with you, Shawna. Thank you.
Thank you.